And with that, I would like to hand over the stage to a ever-smiling lady who is a bundle of energy. She is the PQD of Division L. Please put your hands together and welcome Toastmaster Elna Tittu. Over to you, madam.
Thank you very much, Toastmaster Benin, for those non-debatable statements about me. A warm good morning to everyone, and I welcome you all to the debate workshop of Area 49, Division L, District 105. I would like to acknowledge the dignitaries present for this session. Our main dignitary, Area 49 Director, Toastmaster Rohini Mendonca, Area 50 Director, Toastmaster Sharon Kudavilla, and Division L Director, Toastmaster Stephen George. Debate is an art of persuasion, and our daily lives are filled with persuasion. Today, we are honored to have the stalwarts of debate in District 105 join the Zoom call to give us the tips and tricks of debate. Debate is something which is qualitative, and it requires values, preparation, integrity, and last but not the least, words from your heart. It's not about speaking more, it's about speaking the right word. This workshop is divided into two sessions, the education session followed by the mock debate. To carry forward with the education session, we have a Toastmaster who comes all the way from Oman, DTM Janki from Elite Toastmasters Club. And she categorically states the only time she debates is with her husband. And her favorite part of the debate is the rebuttal speech, where she witnesses the rebuttal speaker tear apart the person on the debate ground. So ladies and gentlemen, let's welcome DTM Janki to carry forward the session. Over to you, DTM Janki.
A very good morning to one and all. Thank you, Toastmaster Elna. Yes, indeed, friends, I'm a very good debater. I excel at debating, and the debating, as Toastmaster Elna said, is always with my husband and both my sons. Since I debate very regularly with them, I have two very good tips for the debaters today. I have learned that the best time for debating is at the dinner table when your mouths are full. And the second is, if you cannot convince them, confuse them so much that they eventually give up. So I suppose the debaters today can make use of these tips. Let's go ahead with the format and the timing rules of the debate. As with every debate, today's debate also has two teams, the affirmative team, which will speak for the motion, and the negative team, which will speak against the motion. The teams for and against the motion has been decided by draw of lots, and the topic for the debate has already been announced. Toastmaster Sharon has already shared the slide about the format of the debate. Let's see how it goes. To open the debate, we have the opening speaker from Team A, which is the team speaking for the motion. This is followed by the opening speaker from the Team B, the team against the motion. Then comes the rebuttal speaker from Team B against the motion, the rebuttal speaker for the motion, and the fifth will be the closing speaker from the against motion and the closing speaker from the for the motion. The timing will be as follows. The opening and the rebuttal speakers get a generous 3 minutes. At 2 minutes, at 2 minutes 30 seconds, the green light will be lit, and at 3 minutes, the red light will be lit. Each speaker has a 10-second grace period, after which the speaker will be muted. The closing speaker has a slightly less generous 2 minutes. The green light will be lit at 1 minute and the red light at 2 minutes. A grace period of 10 seconds will be allowed, after which the speaker will be muted. There will be a 30-second silence between each speaker for the facilitators to make their notes. And at the end of the debate, there will be a 2-minute silence. Toastmaster Sharon, may I request you to share the next slide, please? Debaters, can I hear your hearts go lubbed up, lubbed up? After all, Toastmaster Rohini had said that this is going to be a friendly debate and there will be no judges or no marking. Well, do sit back and smile. This is just for us to learn and understand as to what the judges expect from the debaters in a real debate. How is it that they mark their ballots and what makes for a winning debate? You can see that the content has 70% and the delivery 30%. I don't need to explain, it'll be superfluous. You can see for yourself what goes into the content and what goes into the delivery. I think you've seen this and you've understood this. So now it is over to DTM Soumya Rangarajan, who's going to tell us what the opening speaker in a debate needs to do to ace the debate. Please join me in giving a warm welcome to DTM Soumya Rangarajan, one of the stalwarts of this morning's session. Over to you, DTM Soumya Rangarajan.
Thank you so much, DTM Janaki, for that wonderful introduction. And I think you've set the standards high with that remarkable opening of yours. So to start the session on how to open a debate. Now, let me start with an undebatable fact. And that is the opening speaker makes the greatest impact in a debate. So how does one go about the opening? First point, state the motion and emphasize your team's stand. So for example, if the topic is EQ is more important than IQ, you will start by saying the motion on the floor is EQ is more important than IQ, and our team firmly stands for the motion. But suppose you're the opening speaker of the negative side. Remember a very important thing, you cannot rephrase the topic. You cannot change the topic. You state the topic as it is. EQ is more important than IQ, and our team stands against the motion. So you are not to say EQ is not more important than IQ. You cannot say IQ is more important than EQ. Stick to the topic, the way it is phrased. Second point, now depending on what the topic is, you might need to define certain words so that you support your argument. It all depends on how you're jotting down your points. So in some cases, like suppose the topic was people should go to Mars. Now this is not something which requires a definition. You're not going to define people or Mars. So you can just skip that part of it. But suppose your topic was say something like wealth is better than health. So when you have words like wealth, success, health, these need to be defined according to the way you have structured your opening. And when you define, you have to tell the audience the source of your definition, because your rebuttal speaker will be ready to say, my worthy opponent came out or coined her own definition. So you're not going to give room for that. And I can see Sandeep smiling. He wanted to say that. So what you do is you have to give your source, and your source doesn't have to be a dictionary. It can be an organization or an accredited authority which can define it. Say, for example, suppose my topic is wealth is better than health. I could say the World Health Organization defines health as a state of complete physical, mental, social well-being, and not merely the absence of disease and infirmity. So by defining it this way, you have given yourself the scope for exploring mental health, social health, physical health, and so on. Next, when you get the topic, look for the weak links in it, which you can use to your advantage. Now, when I say a weak link, those are the phrases or words that you can actually latch on to give strength to your arguments. Now, must, should, everyone, all over. So when you're making sweeping statements like this, it gives you a great opportunity to rebut this. For example, some of the common topics which come up, money is the best motivator. Now, none of us is going to argue that money doesn't motivate, but you're going to refute the point money is the best motivator. So you will latch on to the word best. Uniforms must be banned in all schools. Hold on to that must. So your argument can revolve around these words, particularly for the team against. Now, again, suppose I talk about the same topic, EQ, IQ topic. Our topic was EQ is more important than IQ. The negative team can actually, by giving importance to more than, you can actually argue that it is equally important. You're not trying to say that IQ is more important. You're only trying to say EQ is not more important. It can be equally important. So that is why these phrases or words you can hold on to strengthen your argument. I know all of us, the minute we get a debate topic, we're on to Google, typing away debate.org, get all your points. But actually, before you go on to Google or debate.org, sit together, think, use your own logic, your own reasoning powers to come up with ideas, and then Google. So when I say think of it whenever you have a topic, you have to think of all levels, the individual, the society, the community, an organization, the business setup, the country, and the world. So you have to look at all levels. And again, when I'm talking about individuals, think men, women, children, because the same topic could have different implications for different genders. This way, what happens, you cover the social, the financial, economical, political, all aspects, all implications of your topic are touched upon. How many points should you have? Take 4 strong points and arrange them in the order of the best at the top. And if you have more, keep them. So if time permits, add them on, or else your team uses it for the rebuttal. State an argument using your reasoning, using your logic. State your reason for accepting or negating the stand, and then offer either an example or a research finding. Do not give both for the same point because you'll run out of time. So either give a convincing example or you give a research finding. Now, when you're talking about examples, I would think it's best to avoid personal examples, because the immediate rebuttal will come saying that we are not talking about you and just your case is not going to prove this such a big stand. Okay, so avoid personal examples. I think Sandeep is getting a kick out of all that I'm saying. Is he going to rebut all this, Sandeep? Please don't. Okay, no. So when you're talking about people, take well-known people who everyone will know, okay? And they have to be relevant to the topic. So you're talking about a successful business. You're going to quote somebody who's really been successful. So talk about, say, an Elon Musk or an Indra Nooyi, or these are the standard examples which everyone will know. So it will create an impact. Next, when you're talking about research, you'll find that when you Google, all your research will bring only US related information. So if there is a knack for researching also. So you have to specifically look for Europe and Asian and other countries, because you can't keep talking only about US, though you will find maximum information only on US. Then again, your research findings should specify when you're talking about a research, say research done here showed this. You have to have the name of the organization, when the research was conducted, for what purpose it was conducted, and what were their findings. Okay, any one of these you miss out and Sandeep is in the opposition, you've had it. Okay, so watch out. Next, so when I say organization, here again, pick organizations which are accredited, which are well known, UN, World Bank. If you're talking about a government publication, you specify that, okay? If you're talking about a publication, again, it's good, say if you have Harvard Business Review, if you are talking about a newspaper, say a Times of India, the Guardian, the New York Times, well-known names, so that they create an impact. Whether anyone has read New York Times or not, it doesn't matter. The name will carry that impact. Okay, this is something they've really researched into. It has to be true if it's from New York Times. So the publication name and date. So if you are going to give something which is of, say, 10 years ago, immediately your opposition is going to say this is outdated information. So you need to have recent studies. And if it's a university, generally what happens, you'll have your research will have such a long introduction to it. The University of Columbia psychology department, the name of the psychologist, why it's huge. So that will eat up into your time. So try to abridge it without cutting short the relevant parts. I'm going to give you an example of a, say, a research finding. Suppose we're talking same about the EQ, IQ example, and I'm trying to say that EQ is more important because even the success of a corporate depends on EQ. So say my point is, the success of a business depends upon teamwork, upon decision-making abilities, about the empathy of the employees. And so EQ is more important. According to a 2014 article published by the University of Pennsylvania's Wharton School. Now, because Wharton is important, I'm going to emphasize Wharton. Almost 20% of companies are now measuring EQ for hiring people. Okay, so this is what I would say. If you're talking about statistics, remember how you quote your numbers. Either you can give the raw number or quote it as a percentage. Sometimes a percentage has greater impact than a number, particularly when you're talking about children. Suppose you say 48% of the victims of child labor are in the age 5 to 11. So the 48% is a huge number. So that will carry greater impact than, say, 73 million children. So these are the ways you can actually structure your opening and, of course, your delivery. Be emphatic, confident, don't read, go through your notes, glance at it, but look at your audience while delivering, and don't give too much information in a rush. It will fail to have an impact. And finally, conclude by repeating the motion. The affirmative team says, we have given enough evidence, so please accept the motion. And the against team will again state the same motion and say, here we thereby ask you to reject the motion. With this, I conclude how an opening should be done. And now it's over to DTM Sandeep Vengsarkar to tell us about the rebuttal part of a debate.
Thank you, DTM Soumya, for opening the debate and coming up with the points relevant to the opening. Now let's get down to the rebuttal speaker. Now the rebuttal speakers, as mentioned in DTM Janki's slides, the role of the rebuttal speaker is to rebut the arguments made by the opening speaker of the opposition. So as a rebuttal speaker, what skill do you need to have? The key skill that you need to have is the ability to listen carefully. And I will show you some examples, and we will take examples of what DTM Soumya said earlier. And the second most important one is the ability to make notes very fast. The way I approach this is that when the opening speaker of the opposition starts speaking, I just divide my piece of paper into two columns. On the left hand side, I just keep on making notes of all the points which the opening speaker of the opposition has made. That's all you need to do as when the debate is going on. But prior to the debate, and this is where most of the rebuttal speakers fail to do the homework, is prior to the debate, as a rebuttal speaker, put yourselves in the shoes of the opening speaker of the opposition and create an opening speech the way the opening speaker of the opposition would have done. What happens in this scenario? You would have ideally picked up every single piece of research or incident that the opening speaker of the opposition is going to do. And that's when you have your checklist. The example, let's say the Walton example that DTM Soumya quoted, you would have already put it up as a part of your checklist and you would have your rebuttal for that ready. And that is how, as a rebuttal speaker, you prepare yourself even before you enter the debate. Now let's take the debate has started and I'm now going to take you through how do you rebut the points raised by the opening speaker of the opposition, taking exactly the points that DTM Soumya mentioned. First one, listen carefully to the definition. The first thing that DTM Soumya mentioned is the definition. Listen carefully to the definition. Invariably, what happens is that when the definition is being mentioned, the they the team says we define. Who are you to define? The definition has to be as per a dictionary or an organization, and that's what DTM Soumya mentioned very clearly. Number two, a lot of times you will see that the opening speaker of the opposition has defined a topic in a way, defined it in a very narrow construct. So basically, as a rebuttal speaker, if you pick that up, you should be calling that out saying, the opening speaker of the opposition defined the topic in a very narrow sense. The actual definition of the topic is XYZ. To do the second part of that, which is actual definition, you should have prepared yourself earlier. And that is what is the most important part. The second one is what DTM Soumya mentioned was on the research. Now, the research needs to have four things in it. One, the year, the sample size, who did it, and where was it done in terms of geography. And you can discredit a research using any one of these or more of these 4 points. Firstly, a lot of times the opening speaker would come and say, research has said. If that is a statement which has made, you can actually say, who did the research? I did not get any conclusive evidence from the research that the opening speaker has done. Is this some research that this team did on the way to the debate or with their set of people? So that is how you discredit a debate which does not have a research which does not have any supporting. The second one is the year. You come up, if the year which is quoted is, let's say, 2014, how is it relevant to 2020? This is the age of COVID. This is 2020. How is a 2014 research relevant? So that is the second part, which is the year. The third one, and which DTM Soumya mentioned very, very nicely, is the area. A lot of times, all the research that is there most of the time it comes from the US. Now, when these kinds of things come up, and if you have done your background work as a rebuttal speaker, you should immediately come up and say, dear madam, do you know that the US population, even if you take the whole population, is 4% of the world population? How is the US relevant to the whole world? Any topic that we are debating should be applicable to the whole world. But again, as I said, I keep on going back to come up with these kinds of statistics on your own. You need to have done your research before, and how I will come to that a little bit later. The next one is the percentages which are quoted, and I will give a classic example of what DTM Soumya quoted earlier. 20% of the companies in the world are using EQ to do hiring. 20% is 1/5. That means the balance 80% is not doing it. So do you go with a minority or do you go with a majority? See, remember, as a rebuttal speaker, your role is very simple. Discredit every single point that the opening speaker has done. It's not going to affect the scores of the opening speaker of the opposition because the judges have already scored him. But it is going to give you more points as a rebuttal speaker. That is what is important. The next thing, for example, is examples of eminent personalities. And this is normally thrown in as a part of the debate. And that is there. So let's someone gives an example of Elon Musk and Richard Branson or whatever. The way for you to rebut that is to come up with examples of as many eminent personalities who do not support that motion, or support what the opening speaker has said. I agree, Elon Musk is great, Richard Branson is great, but do you also know that these are the eminent personalities who have said so and so? And that is where your rebuttal scores. Every single rebuttal point that you make needs to have two things. One, it has to be referenced back to the statement made by the opening speaker of the opposing team. It cannot be a something standing on its own. And the secondly, it has to be supported by your own research. The best rebuttal to a research is, sir, you quoted a research in 2019 what by so and so, but do you know that there is a research which has been done in 2020 which shows exactly the opposite? That is the best rebuttal for a research that the opening speaker of the opposition would have come with. Now, these are the ways where you can rebut a research. These are the ways you can rebut anecdotes. And as DTM Soumya mentioned, avoid personal examples, avoid personal anecdotes. If the rebuttal speaker is as nasty as I am, they would basically come back and say, who are you? You are not a representative of the population. So basically, this is what you need to be careful about. Now, the last one is the rebuttal speaker. Toastmaster Soumya said that the opening speaker makes the greatest impact in a debate. Now, the rebuttal speaker can do a lot of drama on the stage, and some of that I have just shown you as a part of the way I have gone through this. You could basically come in and say, my learned opponent has missed the bus completely. It did not have any research supporting the statements that he made. It was all a series of motherhood statements without any supporting facts. But if you're making this kind of sarcastic remarks, ensure that you follow them up with the relevant rebuttals, hooks, and the references to what he did or the opening speaker did or did not do. So the drama is there. My suggestion, if you are starting off, avoid the drama. The drama can come later on. The drama becomes a part of the way that you speak and the style that you speak, which you gain over a period of time. So in summary, as a rebuttal speaker, number one, put yourself in the shoes of the opening speaker of the opposition. That's the point one. Point two, ensure that you make notes of every single statement made by the opening speaker of the opposition, and against that then you can start making the notes. Now, how do you, one thing which I forgot to mention earlier, when you are doing a research of your own, one thing people forget, that there is a second page for any Google search. People stop at the first page. You put in a topic, first page, I will get 5 mentions, I am okay with it, I will go ahead. It is said that you can hide a dead body in the second page of a Google search. It's important that you spend that amount of time doing that research in the second and the third pages so that you get the points for a rebuttal. And that is what is the biggest strength. Your biggest rebuttal points will come not in the first page. It will always come in the second and the third page of a Google search. So ensure that you go there. So coming back to my summary, ensure that you have done that. For countering research, look at year, look at sample size. You should have your own research ready to counter it, and look at geography. Anecdotes, come up with anecdotes of people who can go against the motion that has been taken by the opening speaker. One final mention to the rebuttal speaker of the affirmative team. You will speak after the rebuttal speaker of the negative team, but don't fall into the trap of rebutting the rebuttal. You are only supposed to rebut the opening speaker of the opposition team. So that in a nutshell of 10 minutes on how you could potentially start working through your rebuttal speeches and how you can prepare for a rebuttal. Now I'm going to hand over to Toastmaster Vijaya to get into the preparation for a closing speaker and how to attack the closing speech. Over to you, Toastmaster Vijay.
Thank you, DTM Sandeep. So after the impact and the drama comes the closing speaker. Now, this is probably one of the most underestimated roles in a debate team. And you're given just 2 minutes as well. But let me tell you, you are the one who's making the last impression. And the last impression is the one that leaves a lasting impression. So always remember that. And the closing speaker is the one who determines how many points a team gets for teamwork and coordination. A debate is not won by individual speakers, but is won by a team. So let us see how you are going to go about your role of a closing speaker. Now, for a closing speaker, your preparation starts before the debate itself. You have just 2 minutes. Plan your timing precisely. You will be offering your team's stand in a nutshell. You're going to package it well and present it. 1 minute, you will be summarizing your opening speaker's speech. So for this, what you need to do is meet up with your opening speaker before the debate. Obtain the key points of your opening speaker, because your opening speaker, as DTM Soumya has said, would have already prepared with all the research and all the facts. So go through her notes, take down the points. You remember, closing speaker does not just do copy paste, paraphrase. You have to paraphrase all the points that your opening speaker has. And then 1 minute will be for your opening speaker's summary, and then a summary of say 20 seconds for your rebuttal speaker, and then your final statement. That is how your breakup should ideally be. Now, once you have obtained the key points, start preparing your summary. The role of a closing speaker also involves listening carefully, because your rebuttal speaker will not have a prepared speech before. Your rebuttal speaker's speech depends on the opponent's opening speaker. So as a closing speaker, listen very, very keenly to your own rebuttal speaker. Don't get carried away and listen to the other team's speech, because no, you don't have to bother. Your job is not to rebut the other team's speech. Your job is to listen to what your rebuttal speaker is citing. Here, I would also like to add that you have to listen even to your opening speaker, because in case your opening speaker has not given all the points that they had prepared for earlier, you have to be very careful that you pick out only the points that have been stated. Because as the closing speaker, remember the cardinal rule is you are not to introduce any new points. If you do so, you risk getting negatively marked. So remember that very, very clearly. Now, once the preparation is done, let us see how you can prepare your beginning. You need to prepare one strong statement or quote that is pertinent to your team's motion. Restate your team's position very, very emphatically. Now, if the motion was that competition is necessary, is not a necessary part of our education system, you need to start off by saying, our team has established with facts, statistics, and logic that competition is not a necessary part of our education system. You can give a quote here. You can say, Jiddu Krishnamurti has said, real learning comes about when the competitive spirit has ceased. Here, I am not introducing any new point. I am just adding weight to my team's definition, my team's stand. So you can do that. Another way of doing an opening statement, after you've made this dramatic, I have brought in drama, right? Sandeep, I brought in drama as well. So after you made a dramatic entry, what you need to do is you can follow it up by saying, during the course of this debate, my teammates have proven and demonstrated that every house should have a pet, or every house should not have a pet. whatever the motion is, you need to mention that. Then you move on by saying, let me reiterate the points stated by my opening speaker. And when you're doing this, now, for instance, DTM Soumya mentioned about the Wharton School report. So then you need to mention over there, as stated by my opening speaker in the Wharton School report. So you need to emphasize that. If you have a statistics, for instance, about the competition motion, you will say, I have a statistic here which says, one moment, yeah, you would probably also say 1 student death every 55 minutes, as stated by my opening speaker. So emphasize that. Emphasize those statistics that leave a lasting impact on your audience, because you're not going to be able to verbatim repeat everything that your opening speaker has said. Pick out only the very strong statements. So now that you've done with your opening speaker summary, let's move on to how will you tackle your rebuttal speaker's summary. Now, during the debate, you need to listen very, very carefully and analyze what your rebuttal speaker has said. You need to say, how you will present it. You can say, my rebuttal speaker has emphatically punched holes in our opposition's arguments by citing the World Economic Forum's article published on 21st May 2019. Emphasize the recent, how valid it is. So emphasize that. This report highlights that cooperation is more important than competition for education. My rebuttal speaker has shown what a tunnel vision they have employed by narrowing the definition. As DTM Sandeep said, the definition is where it plays a note. Now, if you take a motion like every house needs a pet, you can even say, my rebuttal speaker has clearly shown that the opposing team has no idea of what comes under the definition of a pet. It is as per their convenience. They have clearly ignored the existence of exotic animals as pets. So this is how you need to summarize. As I said, paraphrasing is a key element of being a closing speaker. You provide a very concise summary of your stance. You list your arguments and any strong supporting examples used by both your opening and your closing speaker. End your speech by categorically stating whether you are for or against the motion. This is very important. And time yourself. As I said, timing is so crucial, because your summary will make no impact if you're not able to end your speech by saying that, therefore, I request this House to pass the motion in favor of this motion. Okay, so you need to really clearly state that over there. And if I take this example of the competition thing, what I am going to clearly say is this way. Competition is the law of the jungle, but cooperation is the law of civilization. Therefore, I request this House to pass this motion that competition is not a necessary part of our education system, and we firmly stand against it. So it's very important for you to end your summary in this manner. So as a closing speaker, my friends, your responsibility is to summarize your team's arguments, present them in a very strong manner, reiterate your stand emphatically, bring forth how your rebuttal speaker tossed the opposing team's arguments out of the window and out of the arena. Remind the audience why they should support your team, why your team's stand was most convincing. Bring them onto your side by doing the summary very, very well. Remember that debate is teamwork. You can shine as an individual. You can make an impact. You can have all the drama. But remember, you must dazzle together as a team. Teamwork is what is going to win this debate for you. Over to you.
Thank you so much, the stalwarts of debate for District 105, for that brilliant education session on the different aspects of debate. Now, dear audience, we have a 5 minutes of stretch time. But before we start stretching and smudge our makeup or our, dresses, let's please switch on our video so that we could click a photo in the online manner. So I request all the participants to please switch on your video. Yes, are we all ready and stretched? Moving on to the second session, we are going to the mock debate, which is conducted by DTM Janki as the debate moderator. So ladies and gentlemen, let's welcome DTM Janki. DTM Janki, are you back after stretching? Yes, over to you.
Thank you, Toastmaster Elna. I'm very much back, but not really after stretching. I've been sitting here feeling a bit nervous after all those great learnings from those three brilliant facilitators. Wasn't it an amazing educational session? Debaters, I hope all of you are feeling intimidated enough, like I am. But I would always like to tell this, that bit of adrenaline rush always acts as a catalyst for a wonderful contest. So here's wishing you all the very best. Now let's get to meet the teams who will be participating in this debate. Team A, the affirmative team speaking for the motion, is represented by Toastmaster Brunel Moraes, Toastmaster Jagbir Gotra, and Toastmaster Sudeep Shetty. Team B, which is the negative team speaking against the motion, is represented by Toastmaster Turab Ur Rahman, Toastmaster Purnima, and Toastmaster Sagi Sebastian. The topic of the debate is censorship of media is necessary. I would like to call the opening speaker from the team speaking for the motion, Toastmaster Brunel Moraes. Debater, are you ready?
Good morning, DTM Janaki. I can see and hear you, and I can see the timer as well.
I confirm that I'm able to see and hear you, debater. Over to you, debater.
Good morning. Censorship of media is necessary, and this House firmly believes in the motion. Media, the main means of mass communication, broadcasting, publishing, and the internet collectively regarded. Censorship being the prohibition of any part of books, films, news, etc. that are considered obscene, misleading, or a threat to security. Media censorship is a global phenomenon that has foreshadowed information outlets for centuries, as it is and will always be needed in the maintenance of an orderly state. It is about protecting a society, especially young minds, from the toll of meaningless, hateful, and irrelevant information. You see, before widespread public access to the internet became a thing, people obtained their information from encyclopedias and the daily news. But nowadays, media is sensationalized, and this has gotten much worse since the invention of social media. Hence why censorship has become even more important. Journalism should be a regulated profession. There should be a professional seal within websites showing that they publish only verifiable, unbiased facts. Facebook, Google, and Twitter should reserve the right to fact check some of the informative content and flag those that spread misinformation to the masses. Media censorship is also necessary to ensure content that glorifies or condones violence or hate towards sections of society should be removed. A society needs this intervention to unify under common values and stay strong. In early 2016, Twitter announced that they had suspended over 125,000 accounts since mid-2015 for threatening and promoting acts of terrorism. Finally, internet censorship can filter out and protect children from disturbing content such as sexual violence, detailed instructions in drug use, and child pornography. Information that can weaken a child's moral consciousness and have a detrimental effect on their mental health, a precursor to adolescent crime. In fact, an opinion survey carried out by the School of Information Studies and Charles Sturt University in 2018 found that 93% parents support mandatory internet filtering. The role of media in society is not limited to bringing information to the public. It is crucial that media does not capitalize on selling meaningless sensation that can potentially harm people, sects, religions, and races. We firmly stand for the motion that media censorship is necessary, and this House demands that the motion be passed. Thank you.
Thank you, Toastmaster Brunel Moraes. Now I call upon the opening speaker from Team B, the team speaking against the motion, Toastmaster K.S. Purnima. Debater, are you ready?
Janki, 30 seconds.
Oh, yes, I'm extremely sorry. Maybe have a 30-second silence for the facilitators to take their notes. Okay, now I call upon the opening speaker from the team speaking against the motion, Toastmaster K.S. Purnima. Debater, are you ready?
Yes, moderator. I'm ready and I can see the timer clearly.
Thank you, Toastmaster Purnima. Over to you, debater.
Thank you, moderator. Good morning, my dear fellow Toastmasters, my lovely opponent team members. Today's motion on the floor is censorship of media is required. My team and I stand against the motion today. Let me give you an example. The president beep of the country beep announces the beep on beep. What did you understand by this piece of information? Nothing, right? Exactly. The same way, the censorship of media removes the facts from the actual news or information. There is no point in getting distorted views of news. See what is happening in Korea. It is really difficult to understand the real scenario there. Everything is controlled by the poor government and goons. What is the point of the half-cooked information? It is as good as cheating people with perceptionized views of information. An article, Attacks on the Press, published in 2017 by Columbia Journalism School, quotes statement of Joel Simon, who is the director of Committee to Protect Journalists, which goes like this. While new technology allows the free flow of information, it can also manipulate it by repressive governments to stifle free oppression. New information technologies such as interconnected internet, social media platforms, and smartphones with camera were supposed to make the censorship obsolete. Instead, they have just made it more complicated. Censorship in media is typically a brain-tuning act by the embody who is in power. In this era of online, where every piece of information spreads instantly, it is inapposite to have a censorship of media. It has really taken away the trust and interest on journalism. Hence, with these valued points from our side, my team and I firmly stand against the motion censorship of media is required. Thank you, one and all.
Thank you, Toastmaster Purnima. We have a 30-second silence for the facilitators. Now, may I call upon the speaker, the rebuttal speaker from the team speaking against the motion, Toastmaster Turab Ur Rahman. Debater, are you ready?
Moderator Janaki, yes, I'm able to see you and I am ready. I can see the timer as well.
I confirm that I can see and hear you, Toastmaster Turab. Over to you, debater.
Thank you so much for the opportunity to be the opening rebuttal, to do the opening rebuttal. My esteemed opponent put her points very validly. Now, she started off with the definitions of the media and the censorship. And as you can recollect, all of us are aware that the word media or the definition of media has always been changing right from the time the media has been conceptualized. So it is not just a fact of life today. What is media today may not be media tomorrow. What is media tomorrow, we have not foreseen the future. So your definition of media is still very, very limited. So I think we need to take that into consideration. She also mentioned that the media has been censored for centuries. We had information on encyclopedias. Let me just ask you a pointer. The encyclopedias have been having abridged versions of whenever they go to print. What is the need for that? The need for that is to actually update the information as per the requirement of that particular time. So therefore, what information may be suppressed today may be different tomorrow, or what is a fact in reality today has to be brought out in the future. So therefore, they would be having updated versions of the information in encyclopedias. You also mentioned about particular studies where, and you also mentioned that the media should be a regulated profession. Come on, a media should be a regulated profession. The job of the media is to actually bring out the truth. And if you want to regulate the truth, what are we talking about here? Seriously? I mean, I wouldn't take that argument at all. You also mentioned about a study with regards to Twitter blocking off around 116,000 accounts. What were these accounts? Were they fake accounts? Were there anything else? Were they concerning any particular aspect of pornography or anything? We're not referring to that particular aspect out here. And I think that study needs a little more definition. I think you need to define that a little more. You also mentioned about a study with regards to mental health in 2018, and 93% of the parents felt that the internet should be blocked. We've all seen the effects of ill-gotten information. And if we had probably proper discussion with our kids, they don't need to look at the other sources of information. A proper education to adult education and things like that is the way that you need to actually speak to your kids about. We've all been talking about bees and flowers and things like that, but as long as you open up your minds to proper discussions, I think you have a very evolved human being and you have a very evolved generation coming through in the future. Now, again, I have a few pointers with regards to this question. Where was the study? What is the sample size? How long was the study for? You just mentioned around about 93%. That can take away a lot of people away towards a negative this thing. So I conclude saying that this motion has to be defeated. Thank you.
Thank you, Toastmaster Turab. We'll have a 30-second silence for the facilitators. Now, I call upon the rebuttal speaker from the affirmative team speaking for the motion, Toastmaster Jagbir Gotra. Debater, are you ready?
Hi, ready? Am I audible?
Yes, I confirm that I can see and hear you. Over to you, debater.
Firstly, I would like to start with the points given by the opening speaker, that the beeps which are being given, president beep, information beep, none of the state heads who make a public statement, those statements are never beeped. In fact, we are seeing that with the use of technology, the all the head of the states are very actively involved on the Twitter. If they have to be beeping it up, they will never ever make such comments on the public media. Whatever is coming out, their speeches are well read, well censored, and whatever they are talking is all very monitored things. So the beep part is, I think, is something of a fairy tale. It looks like to me a fairy tale. And how can you say that a state of the head is saying and it's beeping? Second thing my speaker said, that North Korea, she's given an example of North Korea, which is just one country out of 197 countries in the world. You cannot idealize with one country what is going on over there with all over the world. Cannot be. That is totally irrelevant from the topic. Next one was, I am surprised that they're saying that they're taking away the trust of the people by censorship. No, censorship is not taking the trust away. It is just like you're saying that you are comparing the freedom of speech. No, it is not that. Censorship means you're giving the required information only. I would say state a very classic example. The terror activities in India, Mumbai, on 26th November 2008. The entire stuff was live telecasted by the media, which was a food for the terrorists. Have this information been censored out, there would not be so many casualties. This is what we say of censorship. We are not saying that we are breaching the trust or breaching the freedom of speech. Hence, I demand that the House, we stand for the motion be passed.
Thank you, Toastmaster Jagbir Gotra. A 30-second silence for the facilitators. Now I call upon the closing speaker from the negative team speaking against the motion, Toastmaster Sagi Sebastian. Debater, are you ready?
Yes, TM Janagi, I'm ready. Am I audible?
I confirm that I can hear you. And let me just see, yes, we can see you as well. Over to you, Mr. Debater.
Thank you, TM Janagi. Dear fellow Toastmasters, distinguished guest. Censorship of media, is it necessary? Obviously not. Do you want to have news with full of beeps? Or do you want to hear distorted news, just like blind man seeing an elephant by touching one part of the elephant or other? Or you want to be guided by some vested interest, just like kids are guided by a Pied Piper? If you don't want all these things, we need a free media in this world. We need a free media to highlight the wrongdoings of the government and prevent the distorted news coming to us, and to prevent the whole world turning out to be just like North Korea, where you don't have any freedom. Let the individuals take their information and process it. Dear friends, I strongly believe that human beings, including you and me, have got our brains and we are not blind. So we don't have to be carried over or handheld by somebody to take us to the news, which is supposed to be true in their mind, not by us. Since I request you, if you believe that you are not slave and you are independent, then I request you to reject this motion. Censorship of media is necessary. Over to you, Tim Janagi.
Thank you, Toastmaster Sagi. A 30-second silence for the facilitators. I now call upon the closing speaker of Team A, speaking for the motion, Toastmaster Sudeep Shetty. Debater, are you ready?
Yes, I am ready and I can see the timer.
I confirm that I can hear and see you. Over to you, debater.
Good morning, fellow Toastmasters. Censorship of media is necessary is the motion for today's debate. And wow, what a way our opening speaker has opened the motion. She really explained what media is in the present scenario and what censorship means for the present scenario. In all, she mentioned how media censorship is not just a domestic phenomena, but a global phenomena, and has foreshadowed information outlets for centuries. Well, not all censorship is bad, but free expression is equal. However, exfoliating media censorship is a direct mitigation of free speech when we actually start to realize the necessity of it. She further went on to mention about public access of internet become a thing. Nowadays, censorship has become even more important as far as journalism should be a regulated profession. She also mentioned about a society needs to unify under a common values to stay strong since mid-2015. And she gave an example of Stroud University in 2018 found 93% parents support the mandatory internet filtering. A second rebuttal speaker also mentioned about the Mumbai blast cacophony attitude of the media for going all the way out to create chaos in the city of Mumbai. In all, I would say overeating leads to constipation, and taking spurious medicine leads to fatal death. So also excess of media exposure can lead to death of can create chaos and violence in the state. Over to you.
Thank you, Toastmaster Sudeep Shetty. We will now have a 2-minute silence for the facilitators to wrap up their notes. Friends, that brings us to the end of a very interesting mock debate session. I'm sure all of you enjoyed it as much as I did. Didn't you? Please put your reactions there using the reaction buttons. And now it's over to the MC of the session, Toastmaster Elna.
Thank you so much, DTM Janki. Before I move forward, I request the audience, if you have any kind of questions, please share it on the chat so that after the evaluation, we have a question answer session for 15 minutes where the stalwarts of debate for District 105 can answer the questions. We move on to the evaluation where we have DTM Saumya, DTM Vijaya, and DTM Sandeep, who would be evaluating the mock debate which was just conducted. All the three evaluators categorically states that officially they debate very rarely, but unofficially they debate every day at home with their spouse. So without further ado, I pass on the virtual screen to DTM Saumya, who would be evaluating from the opening speaker's perspective. Over to you, DTM Saumya.
Thank you so much, Elna, and good morning once again. So to do a quick evaluation of the two opening speakers, let me start with the affirmative team. Toastmaster Brunel, you started by telling us what media and what censorship meant. You brought in all the aspects of media, what it is, what it does mean in today's times. That was well done. But it would have been better if you had got a proper definition according to a given source. And that's what we mentioned. So rather than have it as your own definition, what it includes, a formal definition as quoted by some source would have added greater impact. Okay, but you did bring in a good intro by saying that in today's world, media means all this. And when I talk about censorship, it means this. And this is a global phenomenon which has been happening since years for preserving an orderly state. So that was a good intro by far. Then your major points revolved around the impact on children, how young minds need to be protected, and how they are dependent on the internet, and which provides a lot of sensational information. And we moved away from the encyclopedia to the internet, which gives you all kinds of information. You also said where children are concerned, they need to be protected from disturbing content. So filtering of disturbing content is necessary. Where you have porn-related information, that also needs to be filtered. Violence, terrorism, all this. So excellent point, because censorship from the angle of children is one of the vital points. The one thing I would have liked you to do was that you had statistics on the 93% parents. You should have slowed down a little when you spoke about that example, because it didn't register with me as to which university and what exactly was the nature of the study. So that impact it didn't create on my mind, and I was there was no way I could rewind to say what you said. So that was one thing you could have done. And in that aspect, you would have also brought in about how films have been censored. You know, that's why we have labels as PG-15, PG-18 U films, and this is to protect children. So that was a simple thing which you could have come up with. You also spoke about how journalism needs to be regulated and verified. Again, a very, very relevant point. You could have added what your rebuttal speaker actually brought in, said that there were two instances. One was the 9/11, where there were guidelines on what media could release by way of visuals, so that there was no panic among the public. As opposed to that, you had a 26/11 case where there was no control on the media, and this in fact aided the terrorists. So that example you should have given to add value to your argument. I felt that what you delivered today, you had all the points, your logic, your reasoning was in place. You had identified the points you wanted to speak about, but you should have substantiated them with more examples and more statistics. And I counted, I think you had about 6 points. Instead of that, if you brought it down to 4, say you could have clubbed the young minds and the children point. Okay, you could have clubbed both of them. You could have kept journalism being necessary verified. Another aspect which you missed out is about revealing sensitive information. It's not just about protecting children or violence and terrorism. It's sometimes censorship is necessary to protect sensitive information of a country or the military and so on. So that was another aspect you could have got. But overall, I thought your thinking process was in place. Your reasoning was perfect. I would have liked a few more examples, statistics, and your delivery should have been a little slower, so that it registered with us. Pause, particularly at the examples and the studies. When you're quoting a source, say it very, very slowly so that it registers. Okay. So otherwise, very well done, Brunel. Moving on to Purnima, who spoke against censorship. Again, Purnima, your starting was effective, very effective when you said, only thing is instead of president, you should have just taken some other, piece of information, saying, taken an actual incident, and said, Bombay clashes, dash, dash, something like that. If you're done, it would have perked our curiosity also. What happened in Bombay? I mean, like, what clash is she talking about? And then the relevance of it would have come out, okay, that we are talking about. So your first point was about giving distorted information, incomplete information, which is very, very important, very relevant point. And you also spoke about the wrongdoing of a country needs to be brought out to the people, and you gave the example of Korea, and probably you didn't want to enter into something political, so you just skimmed over that point. That was smartly done. But as I said, this beat part of it could have been done better because it was a great opening. Then the second point you spoke about, you quoted Simon from the 2017 Columbia Journalism School. Again, quoting somebody from the field of journalism and what his opinion was, what he had to say, would have added a lot of impact to this topic. The only thing which I found was it was so continuous that I lost track of where Simon's opinion ended, where his quote ended, and where you were moving on to the next point. So I kept thinking that this is one huge paragraph about what Simon is saying. So that I felt you could have broken it up and drawn an end to where Simon finished speaking. Then again, you spoke about people, the individual's freedom of speech and the trust, and individuals can bring in, exert their own common sense to filter. Again, I would have liked some more statistics, some more studies to justify whatever you were saying. So that fell short, but your pace of delivery was perfect. In fact, what you said, about all the studies you quoted, that registered because I was able to say 2017 Columbia Journalism School. I was able to catch the person. Everything was said slowly and well paced, but the information could have been more, and your points also should have been some more. Okay, over to you now. I hand it over to DTM Sandeep for an evaluation of the rebuttal speakers.
Thank you, DTM Soumya. And I will move on to the rebuttal speakers, and I will talk about the rebuttal speaker of the negative team, and then go on to the rebuttal speaker of the affirmative team. Firstly, I think one point to both the rebuttal speakers and to rebuttal speakers in general, when you have a rebuttal, you don't necessarily need to follow the same sequence of points as the opening speaker has followed when coming up with the case. If you have a point which is a very impactful point, bring it up right up front, because you have virtually then discredited the opening speaker right at the beginning of your rebuttal speech. I'll give you an example. Toastmaster Tureb, the 93% rebuttal which you did are very valid in terms of you questioned the details of the study. 93% where you just mentioned a 2018 study, who are the parents which were done, and that is what was coming up as a part of it. So why not bring it right up front in the way you could potentially believe it? there was a 3-minute speech by the opening speaker. The only number I saw in that 3-minute speech was this 93% survey done in 2018. But even there, they did not talk about where the survey was done and what was the sample size. Now, that the moment you bring that kind of a rebuttal right up front, the rest of your rebuttal becomes a lot more easier. So then you could potentially go and say that if you look at the speech which was there was a lot of statements which were there, but there were no examples, right? There was no example coming up from the opening speaker of the affirmative team, which basically says this is one example why censorship is important, and that was not there. And you could have called it out generally as a part of your speech. And I think you covered the pointers point to point, but this point did not come up as a part of your rebuttal. Now, uh, you called out the definition of media and censorship has been changing, and what they mentioned is not the right one. It very valid, nicely done, but ideally I would have loved you if you had come back and said the real definition of media or the expanded definition of media is XYZ. That's what I call as a counter point to a point already made by the opening speaker. You made on to the next point, which was media should be a regulated profession, a point made by the opening speaker of the opposition. And you picked that up, you referenced it, and you said, I wouldn't take that as an argument at all. Fine, but why? Where is your supporting on why you would not take it as an argument? And that has to come up as a part to really come up with a really strong rebuttal. So this is the other point which I would like to give you a hint. See, even as a rebuttal speaker, just saying that I don't agree with you is not good enough. I don't agree with you for a particular reason, and this is the reason that has to come up as a part of the rebuttal speaker. So from a referencing point of view, you did the job well. You brought up the 93%, which was a lack of information from a research. I think you did well. So these are some of the other things which you could have brought in. The one thing which I tell all speakers is that never acknowledge that the opposing team is even right to a 1% degree as a part of the debate. The first opening statement by Toastmaster Turab was, the opening speaker of the opposition has brought up some very valid points. Do not acknowledge that there is even one single valid point in the anything that the opposition says. That's how you stand up in a debate. Now let me go on to the rebuttal speaker of the affirmative team, Toastmaster Jagbir. The one strongest thing that you had in that whole rebuttal was your example of the 26/11 attack. And ideally, that is what should have come right up front. The first point, even if it meant you spent 30 seconds on it, it would have been a very strong rebuttal to the opening, to the speeches made by, to the opening speech of the negative team. You brought it there, you brought it a little there, so that's fine. Now, the other thing that you did very nicely was the whole discrediting that first President beep thing, right? Which is also a valid way of basically, and you brought it right up front, which basically says, this doesn't make sense. You are just coming up with a statement because you wanted to come up with a statement. Next one is the other valid thing that you brought in was the one which I liked very much, was North Korea is just one country in 197. You could have pushed it a little more down. The opposition team could not come up with any other example. The only example that you guys came up with was North Korea. A 2-year-old child would have come up with this example. Now that is how you become sarcastic when you and create a drama as a part of the rebuttal speaker. So the point you made, very valid, but ensure that when you put the dagger in, you put it fully. That is something which I always like when you do it as a rebuttal speaker. And then finally, when you went and you closed it, I think you did that very nicely. So in summary, for both the rebuttal speakers, I think maybe because you are doing this for the first time, you stood away from the drama. Absolutely valid. If you have some strong rebuttal points, bring them up right up front and ensure that you spend some time on it. Because if you look at the speeches today, there were very little in terms of examples, and whatever examples that were come up by the opening statements, both of you rebutted nicely. So bring those points up front, ensure that you go down deeper and come up with counterpoints which can counter the examples that have been given. So all in all, a very nice rebuttal. As I said, I had a feeling that both of you were doing it for the first time, but I loved the fact that you picked up points from the education session also, in terms of bringing them onto a part of your debate. So that's all from me from a evaluation of the rebuttal speakers. I now hand you over to Toastmaster Vijaya for her evaluation of the closing speakers.
Thank you, DTM Sandeep. Before I proceed with my evaluation, I would request the timer to please tell me what was the timing taken by the closing speakers of both the teams.
So the affirmative was 2 minutes 15. It just went slightly over. Sorry, I couldn't mute him. And the other closing speaker was 1 minute 37.
1 minute 37. Okay, thank you so much.
You're welcome.
So the reason why I asked for the timing is because as a closing speaker, we have to be very aware of the time limitation that we have, which is 2 minutes. Now, let us first evaluate how our closing speakers did for today. In the order of appearance, I will go with the team against closing speaker Toastmaster Sagi Sebastian. Toastmaster Sagi, what I really liked was what you brought today as a closing speaker was conviction in your stand. That was very evident with your opening statement. And the way you brought in examples of the blind man touching the elephant, of the way that by saying that censorship of media is not necessary because censorship is like, then you're going to follow Pied Piper. These are very good examples. So you brought about your passion, your conviction, and you also reiterated while ending that I request you to reject. I firmly believe. So this is right in terms of the attitude that a closing speaker should have while approaching your closing speech. Now, how did you do in terms of summarization of your opening speakers and rebuttal speaker's speech? Throughout your speech, what I found was that you brought in only a couple of points, but you did not mention who mentioned it. Was it your opening speaker who spoke about Korea, or was it your rebuttal speaker who spoke about Korea? That was not clear. What you must realize is, as a closing speaker, if you give the audience a reminder that my opening speaker mentioned about the example of China, where only distorted information is given, make it point-wise. Secondly, there was a point about the Columbian Journalism School, the 2017 study, that did not appear in your closing summary. Now, it is very important that you pick up the strongest points from your opening speaker. Here, I would like to ask whether, did you get the notes from your opening speaker before the debate? Because that is very important. If you have gotten the notes, then as I mentioned in the education session, half of your work is done before the debate itself because you can take down points from your opening speaker. So if you had brought in those points, and I also noticed that you did not cover any points raised by your rebuttal speaker, that you have missed a huge chunk, because your rebuttal speaker had very clearly stated that the definition of media which was given by the opposing team was limited. So you should have probably said that my rebuttal speaker has shown what a limited vision my opposing team has taken by limiting the definition of media, that is the way you need to bring in strength to what your rebuttal speaker has already mentioned. Your rebuttal speaker also had spoken about blocking of accounts, like how can you prove that they were false accounts? He punched holes in their argument by saying that they can't just talk about fake accounts. Have they brought in substance? He has clearly tossed out their arguments. So if you had just put in these points as well by saying, point number 1 made by my opening speaker, point number 2 by opening speaker, and then our argument was further strengthened by our rebuttal speaker who tossed out the arguments placed by our opposing team. And this is why I firmly believe in this motion. That is the way you would do your summary. But having said that, it was a great attempt at closing, and I believe you have the conviction and the passion. All you need to do now is to sort it out, sort of the points, prepare in advance, and then present it. It is like, you have a cake which is already baked. You, as a closing speaker, put the cherry on that cake by presenting it to your audience, reminding them about the flavor which is there inside. Now, moving on to our next closing speaker from Team Affirmative, that was Toastmaster Sudeep Shetty. Toastmaster Sudeep Shetty, I have to commend that you took 1 minute 37 seconds. And what I really appreciated is you managed to cover the points made by your opening speaker as well as your rebuttal speaker, which was very well done. You started off by saying that, yes, censorship for media is necessary. You brought in about the points that your opening speaker mentioned, how it's a global phenomenon. You also brought in various points. Now, another thing which you did very well was you emphasized about the Stout University's 93% parents support mandatory censorship. And that was very well done because that reminded the audience about that big statistic, because 93% is a huge sum. So it stays back with the audience. So constant reminding with the important factors is what a closing speaker needs to do. And you did that well. You also covered the rebuttal speaker's statement of the Mumbai blast, and which was, as DTM Sandeep rightly said, a very strong point. And you did that. You did justice to your rebuttal speaker's rebuttal by mentioning and reiterating about the Mumbai blast. Now, for you to improve, what I can say is the way you're presenting it. Okay, you had all the substance. Now, how you present it is, you started off by saying, what a way my opening speaker has opened. You are not doing an evaluation here. So what you need to do is you need to tell them that my opening speaker built up a strong foundation by giving a clear definition, mentioning various statistics and research articles. Let me reiterate them one by one. Point number 1, she mentioned about how this is a global phenomenon. Point number 2, point number 3, this is how you go about stating those points. And this, so Toastmaster Sudeep, presentation, it also matters. As I said, you need to dazzle your audience. You need to make sure that it leaves a lasting impression. Even for your rebuttal speaker, you could have said, my rebuttal speaker has shown how hollow the opposing team's stand is by talking about beeps. They didn't even know that a head of a state will not talk about such things. So there's no need for them to be beeped. So you could, just presented. Now, what I really appreciated in both the closing speakers' summaries was that there was absolutely no new point introduced. So kudos to you both on that. You all did very well on that, because as a closing speaker, you're not supposed to bring in new points. And I think you all did very well on that front. So coming back to Toastmasters, Sudeep, you also mentioned about North Korea being the one country and about the 2611. So all in all, you did it well. But when you're ending it, remember that you have got it packaged, presented well, gift wrap it well, tie it with a lovely ribbon. You could tie it. How will you tie it with a good ribbon is probably ending it by saying that Censorship is the child of fear and a father of ignorance. This ribbon could be tied by the opposing team, not by Toastmaster Sudeep. So you need to say that censorship of media is necessary, Toastmaster Sudeep, because we need to save our future generation. That kind of a statement, a strong statement, is what is required to end your speech and summarize and hand it over to the audience. So all in all, both the teams, the closing speakers, you all made a great attempt and brought in a lot of points. Just remember, cite it one by one. The opening speaker, rebuttal speaker, so that the audience knows exactly what you're talking about, and then present it. Delivery also matters, as in any Toastmasters speech. Content and delivery both have to go hand in hand. Over to you, Master of Ceremonies.
Thank you so much, DTM Vijaya, DTM Sandeep, and DTM Soumya for that brilliant evaluation. Before I move on to the question and answer session, I would like to acknowledge few dignitaries which I missed in the beginning, such as our past district director, DTM Robin Anand, Area 24A Director Adarsh, Area 48 Director Toastmaster Hazan. With that, I move on to the question answer session. So the question which we received first was, can we have the timings for opening, rebuttal, and summarizer speech? And I would request the evaluators to please, categorically state that, if it's an opening speaker, how many points, a rebuttal speaker, how many points, and to summarize, how many points, in content manner, how, so that they can stay within the time. I would request DTM Soumya to answer this.
The timing, I think, was told to you. It is 3 minutes for the opening, 3 minutes for the rebuttal, and 2 minutes for the closing speaker. And we allow 10 seconds grace before muting.
Okay. Can you state, as an opening speaker, what is the word count to be kept in mind when he or she is drafting a speech for the opening speaker?
Word count?
Yes.
I would say, I don't think I can
or
talk
how
about
many points? Or how many points?
Yeah, I would say 4 points. And each point, just one line of the reason, one statistic or example or research finding. So you have to start with your reason. What is the stand? Why you're taking the stand? Like today, like they said, journalism needs to be verified so that people are not misled. And then you go on to your statistic or your research finding. And you follow the same pattern for every point.
DTM Sandeep, as a rebuttal speaker, what is the time, or how should the speaker strategize on the basis of time for saying the points?
Yeah, see, as a rebuttal speaker, a lot of what you do as a rebuttal speaker is determined by the opening speaker of the opposition, and that's something. So my recommendation, and I brought it forward during my evaluation, is when you speak, ensure that you bring your strong points first. I have seen in a lot of cases, and I myself have been in some cases where I keep my most strongest point at the end because I want to close with a bang, and invariably end up in a situation that I ended up at 3 minutes without my strong point coming up. So that's number one. Number two, other hint is you don't need to rebut every single thing that the opening speaker of the opposition has done. Choose the things that you really want to do that, and using those 2 or 3 things, you can basically close out the rebuttal properly. So the way I would do it is bring in your new points, for the 3 points first, spend about a minute on them, and then start talking about other things like the motherhood statements and how there were not supportings and so on. See, in a debate, remember, there is no disqualification for time, right? You could finish that in 1 minute and say, unfortunately, I can only speak for 1 minute because that's only the content which my opening speaker of the opposition has given me. They themselves did not have any points. What will I rebut? Right? So use it effectively the way you would want to. That's from a rebuttal speaker's perspective.
Thank you, DTM Sandeep. And DTM Vijaya, please let me know as a summarizer, because I believe it's only 2 minutes for the closing speaker. So how is it that the speaker needs to strategize the content.
It is unfair, isn't it, that you need to
Yes.
cover the opening speaker and the rebuttal speaker, and yet they give you just 2 minutes. Well,
Exactly.
so that is why I say a closing speaker needs to be really sharp on their preparation as well as on the impromptu speech and the analytical skills. As I mentioned earlier, you prepare well in advance by taking the notes of your opening speaker, discussing teamwork. That is why I keep on harping on teamwork, because for a closing speaker, it's very important. You are dependent on the opening speaker's point. So take those notes, prepare 50% of your summarization is about your opening speaker's points. So you're going to spend, I would advise, up to 1 minute max you can go with your opening speaker's points. So pick up those points that are the strongest ones. Now, if your opening speaker has about 6 points, you're not going to be able to cover all of them. So pick out the ones that make the strongest impact with the best statistics, with the most relevant facts. Pick out those and time yourself in such a manner, because you would have prepared earlier. So your word count over there, if you have to, at least about 90 words should cover your opening speaker's facts. Then comes your rebuttal speaker's statements. You give about 20 seconds or 40 seconds for your rebuttal speaker, actually. Take the points. Now, if your rebuttal speaker has not made those many points, then you can go back to some of your opening speaker's points. Okay, because your job is just to remind the audience, remind the judges what your stand is. So make sure you have 40 seconds for that. And then last, to tie it up all up together, to present it well, you need about 20 seconds for your closing statement. And that has to be very impactful.
Thank you so much, GTM Vijaya. Last question in regards to timing. A lot of our participants wants to know, how is the timer going to indicate? Is it green, amber, red, like normal Toastmaster speeches, or what is the time and when is the colors indicated? So if either of you could please put in some light on that point.
So there are basically two. Normally we do one light at 2 minutes 30 seconds. Normally this that is 30 seconds before the allocated time. That ideally should be green, and then a red at 3 minutes. And at 3 minutes 10 seconds in an online meeting, the timer should mute the contestant. That's the normal method.
Thank you so much, GTM Sandeep. Our next question is, can the closing speaker make statement made by the other closing speaker? I believe GTM Vijaya could answer this.
Yeah, can you please repeat the question, if you don't mind?
Can the closing speaker make statement made by the other closing speaker?
See, if it is relevant to your topic, now you cannot rebut the closing speaker of the opposing team. Your job is only to present your team's opening speaker and rebuttal speaker's statements. Now, if in the rebuttal, if your rebuttal speaker has taken the, he wouldn't have taken the closing speaker's statement. So you will not do that in any case. Your job is only to do your opening speaker and rebuttal speaker. If your rebuttal speaker has picked up a statement from the opening speaker of the opposing team, then you can use that statement. But you won't get an opportunity to use your closing, the other team's closing speaker's statement, and that is not right also.
Thank you so much, GTM Vijaya. Our next question is, what if a topic does not have any statistics, no matter how much we research on Google? Do we make stuff up? I believe GTM Soumya could answer this question.
Actually, it does happen with some topics where you can't get statistics actually it's surprising, because if you find US, they would have researched anything and everything, but still you can find there are topics where you can't get studies. You just have to go by logic and reasoning. You can't cook up your own statistics, you can't cook up your own research, but there you will have to just rely on your sound reasoning abilities.
GTM Sandeep and GTM Vijaya, do you like to put in some light?
Just to add up there, yeah. See, I think the key is for the opening speaker is to have a supporting. A supporting does not necessarily mean research. A supporting could have been an anecdote. If you look at today's speech, the anecdote could have been the 2611, right? everything that every position you do needs to be supported. That's all. It does not necessarily have to have statistics and numbers associated with it.
I would like to add over here that if you don't have statistics or research, what you can do, substantiate your argument with a personal story also, if it is relevant. For instance, like today's case about censorship of media is necessary. When you talk about how filtering of the internet is essential for your child, you can give a personal story if in case you don't have statistics. You can talk about your personal thing, which can add weightage.
Thank you so much. Our next question is, what if the opponent opening speaker does not even make a single good point to rebut and speaks in the air all the time? Can we just say there were no points and walk off? I would request you, Sandeep, to answer.
Yeah, I will tell you what you do, right? You basically come on the video and then say, I don't know what I'm going to do here for 3 minutes. The opening speaker of the opposition has spoken for 3 minutes and there was not a single point that he has made. All the points that were done were motherhood statements. He mentioned this, no supporting. He mentioned this, no research. He mentioned this, no example. Any person can come up on stage and make statements like this. So what am I going to do? I would rather save all of you the next 2.5 minutes and go away. So over to you and close the rebuttal. It's still a rebuttal, right? You have discredited the opening speaker of the opposition. That's what is important.
DTM Samya and DTM Vijaya, do you like to add in some more points?
I think Sandeep has done this quite often.
True.
No, but what he says is absolutely right. You could walk away. They don't have a case, so what am I supposed to rebut? They haven't even done their homework and brought it to the table. So you win your case there itself.
Okay. Our next question is it wrong to give a personal example in your opening speech? What if it's a convincing emotional one? I believe DTM Soumya could answer this question.
See, why we say don't come up with personal stories is because it's very easy to rebut it. But one advantage of a personal story is, suppose you have a sweeping statement like all houses should have pets. And I come up with, I'm speaking against it and I say, I am allergic to animal fur. That is one example is enough to refute a sweeping statement. So there your personal anecdote works very well. But suppose you say like, I have been successful even though I don't have a college degree. I mean, like, suppose I say the topic had been a college degree is essential for being successful in life. And I say that I'm very successful even though I don't have a college degree. That can be cause for rebuttal because it can be done very easily. So that's why you have to choose your personal anecdotes.
TTM Sandeep and Toastmaster Vijaya, would you like to put in some light on these? Would you like to add on some points?
Yeah, a strong person. Remember again, the way and I'm now talking out purely from a judging perspective, right? If your strong personal example is going to give you points, come up with it, right? And because the judges are anyway going to finish scoring you as an opening speaker before the rebuttal speaker is going to speak. So the one point which I always say to the opening speakers is don't worry about the rebuttal. Make your case strong. That is more important. The rebuttal speaker's job is to rebut. He will rebut anything that you say. You say good afternoon, he will say what is good in the afternoon. So irrespective of what you will say, it will be rebutted. But you have to make the scoring for a judges is going to be first for the opening speaker. So if your personal example is going to add, bring it in. Don't worry what the rebuttal speaker is going to say. The rebuttal speaker will get 5 points more because he will use that as a part of the rebuttal. That's all. But you would have got 10 points for bringing it as a part of your opening statement.
Okay. Thank you so much. Our next question is, considering politics as a taboo topic in this region, is it permissible to discredit countries like North Korea in the debate? This is in consideration to the mock debate, I believe. So I would request DTM Sandeep or DTM Samya to answer this question.
I think we discussed this yesterday, 2 days back, about what qualifies as bringing in a political angle. Sandeep, would you like to take this the way we discussed it?
Yeah. So again, see, a political angle is when you are discussing the politics of a country. You are not talking about policy statements of the things which are happening within a country. That's not politics. For example, and let's take the censorship thing aside. There is a policy, an education policy in Finland, which says that there will be no exams for students till grade 5. Now, if you bring that up as a part of a debate on exams, would it be considered political? No, because that's a reference of a state of a policy that a country has. That's all. As long as you don't get into uh, a discussion around the parties and the political stand of a country, that's not politics. That's my view, and that's how I would take it going forward.
Last question for the day. In a group of 3 persons, how can we decide who will open, who will rebut, and close to make a best debate group? I believe they are looking into what are the talents we need to look in for an opening speaker, rebuttal speaker, and a closing speaker. So I would request you all three to add in some points on this.
I would think for an opening speaker, a person who's most comfortable with a prepared speech takes the opening. But of course, you also need to be somebody who's a little emphatic, who can project your voice very well. That would make a perfect opening speaker. The person who does a rebuttal should have a strong presence of mind, a little aggressive, who can bring in sarcasm. If you can bring in humor, that would be the cherry on the top. And the closing speaker, somebody with the best language skills who can summarize and rephrase, that would be the ideal closing speaker.
DTM Sandeep and Toastmaster Vijay, do you like to add in some points?
I agree with I think with what Soumya says. Ultimately, I think as debaters, if you want to try, you should try all three roles. And if you are an avid debater, you should fit into any of these roles. You should be able to do an opening speaker, a rebuttal speaker, and a closing speaker, because that is what debate is all about. Having said that, for as Soumya rightly said, for a rebuttal speaker, you need to be someone who can pick up the points well and analyze it well enough to rebut it immediately. And for a closing speaker, you need to be able to be attentive and think on your feet, because you need to present everything well. So apart from that, whatever Soumya said is absolutely bang on.
There is this final question. The audience wants to know, is the mark for all the 3 speakers same by the judges, or is there a mark differentiation as per the judges' ballot?
There is a marking differentiation. So the ballot which DTM Janki showed, that same thing is used for every speaker. So a judge will judge the opening speaker, the rebuttal speaker, and closing speaker separately, and the total of those 3 will become the total for the team. And whichever team gets the highest point wins. So invariably, you could have an opening good, a rebuttal down, and then something which is there, which a closing again could be different. So it's the total score that matters.
Thank you so much to all the stalwarts, as I mentioned before, of District 105 on the debate. And to witness the stalwarts in action, we have a debate club in Division L who meets on the first and third Wednesday from 7 p.m. to 9:30. And I request you all, when you guys get the chance, please come in and check the club. With that, I hand over the stage to for the vote of thanks to the Area 49 Program Quality Assistant Director, Toastmaster Saji.
I had an argument with my wife yesterday. Friends, as you all know, I lost the argument. How I wish that the Area 49 debate workshop had been scheduled yesterday morning instead. Fellow Toastmasters, I think that we're all going to leave this workshop with valuable information on the art, no, the science of debate. With debate season in full swing, I'm sure that this workshop will go a long way to participating and witnessing some great debates in Area 49 and beyond. I normally would thank the attending audience at the end, but I will make an exception today. So please give yourselves a round of applause for your attendance at this workshop. All of you. Our education session today has been conducted by a trio of amazing Toastmasters. Please give a round of applause to DTM Soumya Rangarajan, who gave a wonderful session on the tips and tricks for being an effective opening speaker and gave a great evaluation on our mock debate opening speakers and some answers on our Q&A session as well. A round of applause to DTM Sandeep Vengsakar, who provided the drama skills required for the rebuttal speaker and the key points on how to discredit your opening speaker, the opening speaker of the opposite team. Thank you for your great evaluation points and the answers at the Q&A session. To Toastmaster Vijaya Sukumar, a round of applause. You said those golden words that the last impression leaves a lasting impression, and giving us the importance of reminding the audience who actually won the debate. Thank you for your great evaluation and answers on the Q&A session. With 158 attendees today, this successful workshop has been made possible by the leadership of Director for Area 49, Toastmaster Rohini Mendonza. A round of applause to her. A loud round of applause to Toastmaster Stephen George, our Division L Director, who has provided guidance, leadership, and encouragement to us for all our events and clubs of Division L. To our Zoom Master, Toastmaster Sharon Kurvilla, our timer, Toastmaster Simran Nair, and Sergeant at Arms for today's workshop, Toastmaster Benin. Thank you for your flawless execution and facilitation of this successful workshop. Now they say that gamma rays are the highest energy form of light in the universe. But what can I say about Toastmaster Elna, our MC for the event, who emitted more energy than gamma rays today? Wonderful handling of the Q&A session as well. And thank you for being the MC. A round of applause for our moderator, DTM Janaki Raghavan, who conducted the debate and the education session. It is difficult to be moderator for both the sessions, but today she did it. Special thanks to our other area directors, Toastmaster Adarsh Medgal, Area Director of Area 24, Toastmaster Hazem Hegazi, Area Director of Area 48, and Toastmaster Sharon Kurvilla, Area Director of Area 50, for promoting this event. A special word of mention for Division PR, Toastmaster Anup Chandran and Toastmaster Aparna Rajan for making this event a success and all the work done behind the scenes. So friends, now it is time for me to ask the important question that is asked after any debate. Who won today? I think we all know the answer. All of us are winners today. Toastmaster Stephen, Toastmaster Rohini, this workshop is a huge value add for our district and the Toastmasters community as well. Thank you all once again for attending this workshop. Thank you all for your patience, and at the risk of a rebuttal from Toastmaster Sandeep Vengsakar, I wish you all a very good afternoon.